Welcome to the Spiritualpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Christian, aka Love Pixel. And in each episode, we sit down with spiritual entrepreneurs sharing their knowledge, wisdom, and tools on their path to authentic success. Let's dive in. What's up, beautiful people? This is Christian from the Successful Spiritualpreneur Podcast. And today I'm super excited to have Jessica Karwat on the show. She is a women's transformation coach helping female entrepreneurs build aligned, thriving businesses without burnout. After building a successful health coaching business, she realized hustle wasn't the answer. Inner healing was. Through deep inner work, she embraced feminine energy, self-trust, and emotional alignment to create success with ease. Now she helps women break through limiting beliefs, overcome subconscious blocks, and build businesses that support their dream life. Jessica's mission is to show women that success comes from stepping into personal power, not sacrificing well-being. She blends inner work with aligned strategy for more freedom, more fulfillment, and more flow. Welcome to the show. Couldn't imagine a better guest. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I love it. So tell us. I love that you've discovered, the balance, so to say, of the divine masculine and feminine. How do you apply that in business, and what is your definition of a successful spiritualpreneur?
Yeah, that's quite of a question to start with.
Yep, we don't waste time here.
We don't waste time. I love it. I would take it back to when I started my business and when I realized very quickly into building my business that there were a lot of my past, I want to say, patterns and beliefs I brought into the business that on the one hand made me very successful, and on the other hand made me realize that it wasn't sustainable. So what I mean with that is, we all grow up learning certain things about the world, about ourselves, right? We have experiences, and of course I had my own, and I've always been, very proud of being the hard worker, dedicated, showing up no matter what. And so, of course, when you have your own business, that is very beneficial when you're like this, right? Because you do have to show up more sometimes than, you thought maybe initially you would. And so, I started to build my business, I became very successful very quickly with my vegan health coaching business. And I was like, I didn't even know at that point what I was doing, right? I was just like, let me put it out there. Let's see what happens. Let me just grind and work really hard, and it's going to work, which it did. But eventually I found myself at a point, and I remember it so vividly because it was at a time where, I worked really hard. I built myself up to a certain, success and to a certain money income level that I wanted to have. And for the first time, I took a trip with my friends who were also coaches at that time. And we went to Greece, and, I was so excited to be there. And I just remember being locked into my room and working nonstop. I just remember working a lot. And I also got my bleeding, for women, it's also something that I really talk about a lot. I got my period and I was in horrible pain. I remember just being in pain. I was coaching clients on my bed. And I remember just thinking to myself, is this normal? Like, should I be feeling like this? Because then I took a break, I went down, and my friend came up to me and she just asked me the simple question, how are you doing? And I immediately start crying, and I'm like overwhelmed. I'm like, if this is what success looks like, I don't want it. If I have to sacrifice my health, if I have to sacrifice my personal time to be here with my friends, this is not what I want. And so something clicked within me where I realized that a lot of my old patterns that I initially thought were super useful were actually in the long run harming me in my business because it was no longer sustainable the way that I was running my business. And that's where it kind of all came together. And I had this big aha moment that, I asked myself, what's the point of having a business when you're miserable, when you're unhappy, when you're unhealthy? Like, I can make all the money in the world, but ultimately, that's not the life I choose to have. And so I now believe, yes, you can make a lot of money, you can be super successful, but it starts with yourself first and aligning yourself with the values that you actually want to have in your business. So I don't know if that answers your question. That was a very long answer, but hopefully it did.
Yeah, no, it's good. You just tied in your journey, your experience to that, and I think listeners out there really value someone who's being authentic. And I think that's like the new currency is authenticity. Because followers and stuff like that, it's not that what it was anymore. People really want to connect and be with the person. And, what you've done is really brought yourself into alignment and, just really thought about and experienced what it is like to be either super on the, hustle side or, well, I don't want to also neglect my feminine side, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the biggest. It's like I do agree. Authenticity is really big, and I do think that's why, on some level, if you are, and I think this is also the people that you speak to and the people who listen to this podcast. It's like when you are a very good-hearted person, sometimes it's really hard to lead a business the way that business coaches tell you to do business, because business can be very masculine, it can be very results driven, it can be very pushing and very ignoring the human side in a way. And so I found myself a lot of times in situations where my business coach would tell me something else, but it didn't feel human, it didn't feel good to do it. And so I think what you brought up is the authenticity is so important. And I think like it's crazy to think I've had clients I worked with 5 years ago and I'm still in touch with them, because the relationship that I built with these people goes beyond just, hey, I was your coach, I helped you get results, and that's it. But
Yeah.
there was truly, a community, a connection, a relationship that I built with these people. And yeah, I just that's why I want to have my business. It's not just to, of course, you want to be successful and get the results that you want, but at the same time, it's important to not lose yourself in it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. How could we, for everybody that's out there that's listening, how can we like how can we guide them to find their alignments, their equilibrium? Because that balance point is different for every person. Like, is there any tips or advice you have to like, well, start finding your equilibrium first, and then obviously put yourself out there in a business, as a business, as a brand. Is there any tips you have finding that alignment point?
Yeah, actually, a couple. I truly don't believe anymore, which I used to. I don't believe anymore that strategy is strategy for everyone. Um, Strategy is not everything in business, and there's people who can, 100 people can apply one strategy, and 10 people are going to be successful, and 90 will not. And it has nothing to do with them not being able to apply it or they're doing it wrong. They could do everything right, but if it's not in alignment with who they are, it's just not going to work. And I found myself, I used to be the one chasing the next strategy. I was like, okay, this strategy is not working, or it only gives me these results, let me get to the next one, let me get to the next one. I would always jump because I didn't look inwards and ask myself, what is it within me that is creating those results? It's not just strategy, it's something else that within me is creating that. And so two things that have really helped me, and because I specialize in working with women too, the first thing is definitely, if you are a woman, allowing yourself to understand your menstrual cycle, because you have, as women, you have energy cycles. That means we work a little bit differently in terms of our creativity, our productivity, the way that we show up, the way that we feel about ourselves. All of that impacts how you feel and how you show up and the content that you create or how you can serve. And so it's really important to understand that we have those different phases that we go through, and in each of those phases we have we feel differently about life and business and everything. And so it's very important to learn how to work with those energy cycles. That is the first thing that I would say for the female listeners. And the second thing, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, it's human design. Human design is something that completely changed my life. If you don't know what human design is, it's pretty much, it tells you how your energy works, and there's 5 different types, 4 to 5 different types. People have different opinions about that. And so it will tell you how your energy works, and because you know how your energy works, you will be able to then structure your business according to that energy. So as an example, I am a projector. I'm a 2-4 self-projected projector. That's what it's called. And as projector, we are not meant to work a lot. I know it sounds very, what does it even mean? But as projectors, we're very good at high, high, how do you say, high impact tasks in a short amount of time, right? Instead of grinding and doing a lot, we need to actually retract. We show our, our gifts through either speaking. For me, that is speaking. I'm a self-project projector. That means my throat chakra is very dominant. And that helps me, for example, if I want to get clients, is to speak. So what I do is, instead of, for example, creating a lot of carousel posts, which I do too, but for me, it's more powerful when people who are interested in working with me, when they hear me speak, right? So podcasts, YouTube videos, when I do TikTok, I speak, right? Whereas for another type and another, authority, it might actually be another way of creating content or another way of marketing that would work for them. So that has truly helped me understand what my gifts are, instead of doing things that are actually not in alignment with who I am, and then feeling burned out or feeling resentful towards my business, towards the things that are not working. So these are the two things.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think, always like doing like the inner work, it never stops. And like there's so many cool tools like human design out there to just help guide you. So yeah, I love that you mentioned that. And quick question for, like you as a brand, as a business, like what type of service and products do you offer? And how do you get it out there in the world?
Yeah. So I started, as I said, as a vegan health coach. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, because a lot of people are like, oh, why did you shift? Why did you decide to go into business coaching? I was a vegan health coach for 4 years, and I was very successful in it. I had, you know, hundreds and hundreds of clients that had amazing results. But I eventually found myself at a point where I was already doing very deep inner work with my clients, meaning I was already helping them with trauma healing, with their subconscious reprogramming, with their mindset. So the clients in my world who were already clients were getting amazing results, but I wasn't talking about it. So if you were to look at my Instagram over a year ago, it was mainly vegan nutrition, vegan training, vegan, all of that kind of stuff. But people actually didn't know that my transformations go a lot deeper than just, which is not just, but like I felt like I was so much more than what I was portraying myself as. And
Yeah.
so last year, I hit a point where I no longer wanted to be that. And it was really a very difficult decision for me, because
Yeah.
you've built something so big and everyone knows you for that, and all of a sudden
Yeah,
you're like,
you built that big persona and the image and the brand, and like we at the same while that thing is growing and while we're building and while that's being projected more onto and built, like we evolve, like we grow, and
exactly.
then we are a different version. And I was like, well, how do I put this out now? You know?
Exactly. And it was such a journey, because I would then look at all these other vegan health coaches who, like, are, and there are people who started along the time as me, and they're still doing it, and they're super successful at it. And sometimes I was like, why can't this be me? Like, why do I have to change, or why do I have to whatever, right? It have to be complicated. But how you say, like, I hit a point where I remember so vividly. That was last year, I think February or March, and I was doing a masterclass. And this masterclass was about inner healing and trauma, and I was so passionate about this masterclass. And I had these people that were there, and the questions were, "But how do I get my vegan protein?" And I'm sitting there, and I'm literally like, "Okay, this is no longer working for me," because I started to feel resentful towards people who have the right to ask a question like this. But I felt like this was no longer me. I didn't want to answer these questions anymore. I wanted to
Yeah.
go deeper with people. And so, yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard to make that decision. It's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy to decide
At that
something like
point
that.
when kind of that question was like a little bit out of or a lot out of alignment to what you wanted to answer. Just like, I don't know. It's just like, is this my vibe? Is this my tribe anymore? You know what I mean? So yeah.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
how did you make that transition? Like, did you, yeah.
Yeah, so that masterclass ended. I'm sitting in my room and I'm angry, I'm sad. My partner comes in and I just start crying. I'm like, I'm over it. I'm literally over it. I cannot do this anymore. And the next day, at that time I had an assistant coach who was helping with my clients. She feels something is off. And, she's like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, no, no, Amanda, I think I have to change everything. Like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know. And that was the hardest point. I didn't know what I wanted. I knew I didn't want that, but who was I without that? So it was like, well, is it going to be life coaching? Is it going to be like, what is it? What am I going to call myself now? Because you also, titles, and everyone gives you a title, and like you define yourself by the title, you define yourself by your achievements, you define yourself by what you do. And for me, it just felt so much more complex of what I was doing, that last year, for a lot of time, it was a lot of death of my old identity. So that is also a grieving process of like grieving that person that you used to be, that you no longer are. Creating that space for uncertainty and for allowing yourself to also feel lost, because a lot of people think, feeling lost is bad or we shouldn't feel that way. But I actually created this space to just be, and to also figure out, like, who am I beyond what I've created? What do I actually want to do? So that was that space that I created, where a lot of, purging, and a lot of like just letting go, and a lot of healing was happening. And then also, then came that reinvention of, well, if I'm no longer this, and I'm in this process of reinvention, I just allowed myself to play around with it a little bit, right? So I knew I had some people who were still my clients. I just had the most wonderful people in my world. So many people who still stayed, even though I was a vegan health coach when they joined, and now I'm a business coach. Like, they're still with me after all this time, because that's why when you say authenticity, I agree with that 100%, because the work goes so much deeper than just here are your results, right? And so for a long time, I just allowed myself to play around. I created, a short program here about confidence. I created a short program here about healing. I created another program here about this. And eventually I was like realizing, I started to talk to more people and my clients, and I was asking them, listen, what is it that you actually want in your life? Like, if you were to right now choose, if I could have a blank slate and like create, like, what would be your dream life? Because in my mind, I always had this word like dream life, dream life. Like, I've created my dream life. I like, I travel the world, I work online, I have all the things I ever wanted. And so I was like, I guess I'm really good at manifesting and creating those things for myself. So I wanted to know what my clients wanted. And every single person was to me like, oh, if I could just have my own business and my own freedom, that would be great. And so it started to click for me. I was like, why don't you have your own business? What's holding you back in having your own business? And they're like, yeah, like, I'm not good enough. I don't have experience. And I like all this stuff that comes up, right? When we talk ourselves out of the things that we think we can't have. And I'm like, okay. So it all started to click for me of like, I can still do all this inner work, because ultimately you create your outside base of what's inside of you. So even though I call myself a business coach, most of the work I do is inner work. It's regulating your nervous system, it's breaking through your trauma, it's reprogramming your subconscious mind. Because strategy is nothing when you still don't believe you can do it. When you still have those subconscious fears of being seen, or charging for what you're worth, or putting yourself out there. And so that's how it all became one. And when everything started to click for me, I don't get me wrong, I love strategy, I love teaching that, but 90% of the time, the people actually need this other work, because oftentimes we do know what we need to do. We know that we need to show up. We know what we need to put up. But the reason we're not, or we're not doing it the way that we know we should, is because there is inner things that are not aligned with who we need to be, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I really love that because that is the feminine side of strategy. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, this plan is great, but then people don't like act on it for a million different reasons because they're
Exactly.
missing that kind of like soil of nurturing or support or just like personal belief, I guess, layer that supports that change, that supports that strategy, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm doing a masterclass tomorrow because it kind of hit me as well, which is called the wealthy nervous
We
system.
should use that like self development or whatever. Like in the inner work is the feminine side of strategy. That's a good one.
That's a good one. Yes, I love that. I'm actually
You know?
hold on, I'm gonna write this down.
Yeah, write it down. This is a good one. It's like,
The
yeah, because
inner,
I look at everything in my life through the lens of like the divine masculine, divine feminine, and kind of yin yang. Like, what's the balance? Like, because that really, for me in life, that's usually what it comes down to. When something is too masculine,
yeah,
it's cool for maybe a while. Like, I'm doing a Spartan race for one day, but I'm probably gonna be tired of that. You know, if I would do that every like once a month, it's like it's too
yeah,
much. You know, it's like
yeah,
but like and then the feminine is like ooh it's just like the cuddling and watching a movie is like ugh
yeah,
also you know what I mean
yeah.
like where do you find your balance within yourself, within your business, within your partner, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I find like, I worked with over those 5 years, I spent a lot of money on my development. I spent a lot of money on business coaches. And the thing that was always missing for me was exactly that. Like
Hmm.
the last person I also worked with, don't get me wrong, she's great. She's huge in the coaching space. Everyone knows her. But also like there were things she would say to me of like, just put yourself out there, just show who you truly are, just be bold. And I was like, I don't know who I am. Who am I? Because ultimately, like we all act with those filters on, right? The things that I heard when I was 5 years old are still within me unless I don't heal them. And so when you tell me just be yourself, just be your authentic self, I don't know who I am unless I let go of these filters and I peel off those layers to find back to who I truly am. And that's why I feel like a lot of times, like when we look at so many people, it's all, and that's going to sound really weird, but a lot of the content is so the same because we're all like trying to be ourselves and then we take on all these ideas and identities of how we should be, but the core of who you truly are is missing, and you can only get to the core of who you are when you peel off all these layers of the things you've heard, the things you think you are. Like one of the biggest things I see for women is the good girl syndrome, right? It's this like growing up and hearing, oh, just be a good girl. A good girl doesn't dress sexy, or a good girl doesn't trigger people, or a good girl keeps her mouth shut, or a good girl doesn't cry, or a good girl doesn't do this. Including myself, I heard a lot of those things. All of us women, we hear that when we grow up as children. And so then you have a coach who tells you, just be bold, just be this. And your good girl, your inner syndrome is like, but what if I trigger people? What if like all of a sudden I get a hate comment, my whole world is going to crash down because you don't have a foundation of understanding who you actually are at the core without all of these layers, without all of these, we can also call them the shadows that we all carry within ourselves, that we need to heal first in order for us to be able to actually know who we truly are. So when you're saying the feminine side of strategy, I 100% agree because that's so important that we see this equally as important, if not even more, in my opinion, than actual masculine strategy and the applying of the work.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the epitome of life, you know. One is nothing without the other, you know. It's like feminine side of strategy is exactly as useless or useful as the masculine side.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like, because what is the belief? I can do it. I can do it. I know I can. Super confident, but I'm not gonna do shit. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's the
yeah,
same shit. You know, it's like, well, the result the same. It's like it's not gonna come out. You know,
absolutely.
so yeah, very. It's funny.
There are some people who really thrive in only the masculine, and the feminine might just be a small percentage, and that's fine. I feel like the most of the world is built on that, and it's fine. It works to a certain extent. But I believe as human beings, we're so much more complex. And I had this conversation with this amazing person I met online as well. She's a healer, and she has all of these like multidimensional things within her that she offers. Um, and she was also saying like, I've been applying strategy, everything I need to, based on if you were to just like look objectively, I should be successful, and I'm not, and I'm not. And she knows both the feminine and masculine. which means there must be layers she's not seeing yet to what's actually blocking her success, right? And so it's really important that we, in my opinion, that we allow ourselves that space as well, which I think that's what I was saying before, like that space of that transition of, okay, I no longer want to be a vegan health coach, what do I want to be instead of jumping right next to the next thing. Which I do agree, messy action is important to get to know yourself, but that space to just be, to get to know yourself, is equally as important in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. It's going to be exciting to observe how with AI the landscape evolves, because with
Yeah.
AI is just like as any technology, it's just an amplifier, so if you are already something, it's going to amplify that, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot easier to start anything. Like I can be, I don't know, the biggest seller of tea on TikTok and Instagram if I wanted to in a year, right?
Mhm.
um, but do I really want that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So very, very, very interesting. Like doing that again, it comes back to like as within, as so without. Like doing that inner work, like exploring yourself, making sure that what you're starting, you're really passionate and really care about. Then you're on the right track. Yes, you're gonna evolve. Yes, you're gonna do this and do that. But just make sure you choose something that you love. You know.
Exactly. And that's where, like, when we talk about AI already, I was at an event in the beginning of the year in Dubai, and they were talking about how AI will become more and more important, and AI will substitute jobs. Like, it's inevitable. It's already happening, right? It's already happening. But the thing that will stand out is something that you can't substitute with AI, which is connections, which is authenticity. Like, yes, there's going to be, AI YouTubers and AI podcasts. It's already happening, right? They even have podcasts that is fully AI generated. Um, but people will don't in my I don't think a lot of people will want that, because the more this side takes over, the more people will actually be wanting to have more real connections and more authentic conversations. um that's what I think, and that's what I hope, especially as coaches or people who like are here to heal people or to bring people together. That's going to become even more important as this other side takes over.
100%. Yeah. So I feel the same. Like people are really gonna see how there's gonna be a lot more noise online, and you're
Yeah.
gonna see much more quickly who you resonate with, because again, it's so much easier to put yourself out. Like, but who do you put yourself out as, right? So
Yeah.
that alignment, that authenticity, that just like that being human will become so much more apparent and important. People are going to care about that a lot more in the future. That's why I think getting into personal branding now is a good time, because it's in a couple of years from now, there's going to be all kinds of things floating around the internet that are to some extent without substance,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, beautiful. So I'd love to, shift the conversation a little bit towards um, technology, website branding, that kind of stuff. Because for me, it's always interesting to hear people's opinion on like, do you remember when you had your first website and how it looks now, and how kind of like it feels like having a new website or having a website is always kind of like putting a stake in the ground. It's like a new identity or a new version of yourself has been made manifest and put out there. So do you remember these points in your life where you're just like, yeah, I had like 3 or 5 or I don't know how many, but like I remember because this shift happened, that shift happened on the brand or website side.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. I do remember when I first launched my first program. I didn't have a website. It was on MailChimp. You could create like a landing page on there. It was the most basic thing ever. Just a picture of me and some. I remember it was like my brand colors back then were like pink and purple, and I had my first like brand photos with my friends. Um, and that was the most simple thing, but it converted a lot of people because I do think there a website is important, but a website, how I see it, is only an amplifier of your brand on any other platform, right? So to me, my website has never been the number one thing I want people to look at first. I first want them to see my content. I first want them to connect with me in another way. And my website is like, it shows all my work. It shows how you can work with me. It shows my achievements and all of that kind of stuff. And so I know throughout the years, I had a website which was very, very simple. I think I made it even myself. I don't remember. And then it was mainly, as I said, like it had been about me and then my program. And I had like one main program for a long time. And then I hired one person um, like a couple of years after who changed my website alongside my branding because I ended up calling my company something else, and she like professionally designed it with, I had new pictures taken, and everyone, and I still have this website because it still actually represents everything I'm about. um, and everyone who ever goes on that website actually loves it. They're like, oh, it's so beautifully designed, the pictures, the font, blah blah blah. I no longer work with that designer, but I was able to edit things myself along the time. Um, and yeah, I think it's so interesting because there are people who like don't care. Like my business coach, she is a millionaire, like multi millionaire. She has no website. She has landing pages, and they're the most simple things ever. She doesn't care because she says it's not important for her. She makes lots and lots of money without a website. And then there's other people who say it's really important. So I think again, it's strategy. It's, how you shine the best. I know I sell best when people spend time with me, when they trust me, when they have a connection with me. And the website is just an amplifier of them, afterwards, maybe checking testimonials or blah, 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 looking at those things, but not really website first and then, that way. So usually it's the other way around for me. Whereas for some other people, they shine through that. And that's about you figuring out what works best for you and what strategy feels the best for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, totally. We have a lot of people that come that are super successful on social, and they don't have a website. They just work with link trees and certain builder tools or like a stand
Exactly.
store site, something like that. And at some point, they're like, I kind of like want a home for all this kind of stuff, because it's not as flexible, and I get that, like, because yeah, you want to give people a place where you can just land, just chill here, kind of like a living room. It's
Yeah.
like, instead of putting them into like, you go to the bathroom, go pee now.
Yeah.
It's a different energetic approach, but yeah, I definitely think people want to get to know, like, and trust you, and first that happens on the content side.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think like, especially in a world like today where we're so bombarded with a lot of information, the quicker you can get a person to see what you're about, the better, right? So I do think sometimes just having a link there that immediately leads to the thing that you're offering right now or the masterclass that you're doing, it's a lot better instead of them having to look for it. Like they lose interest. People don't have a lot of attention
Very quickly,
today,
yeah.
right? And so like every person that is big is going to tell you like don't overwhelm the people with millions of links. Just have one link there that you can go to, or two or three. But it's very easy to like look at it rather than them having to find what you're about, because that makes the process, they will forget about it, they will forget about you, because it's so much, it just takes so much more time and effort in their mind. And you know how we scroll, like it's so quick that we the easier you get people's attention, the better.
Totally. That's why things like, many chatbots and like these, DM automation tools work, because they
Yeah.
just make it easy. It's not
Yeah.
that I don't want to be a robot, but like if I see a post and I vibe with that person, whether it's a carousel or reel, whatever it is, and I comment a word and I get like a guide that is like the extension of what the message that she has on them. It's like, yeah, I'm all for that, because it's easy, rather than go to my website and look on the resources, and then I go there
Exactly.
and it takes forever to load, and then I need to find the thing to opt in, versus like
Yeah.
one word, I have it in my inbox, I look at it later.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so much easier, for sure.
Yeah, Beautiful. Well, I had a couple more questions in terms of your personal, daily routine. Like, is there anything that you do on a daily basis that helps you to stay in alignment? What kind of tips do you have for us there?
I love that question. I recently made a training for my clients on that because my opinion about routine changed quite a lot. Um, I want to say the first couple of years in my business, I was like the most routine person ever, which meant like 6:30 I wake up, 7 I'm at the gym, 8:30 I'm walking home, 9 I'm having breakfast, 9:15 I'm starting work, like super super like everything, structured. And I realized how much stress it gave me. I would like be so annoyed if like my partner needed 5 more minutes to like tie his shoe, or like those small things that like would really add more stress to my life rather than it making it easier for me. And so I had to ask myself, well, do I want a routine that enhances me or that stresses me? Do I even want a routine in the first place? Or do I want to have I want to say tools in my toolbox, and I can always grab onto a tool that feels good in that day that I know I have available at that time, rather than having like a 3 hour morning routine where I work out, I meditate for 5 hours, like, all of these things that like, if it stresses me out more, I don't want that. And so the way that I do it now is I try to work out like I want to say 6 times a week. So I do in the morning either go to the gym, or if I do yoga or anything like that, that is my thing that like is non-negotiable for me. But anything else with like meditation, journaling, I do tapping. I have my own somatic practices that I do when I feel like I need, to heal myself through a block or anything like that. I add them into my day as well. So it's not just like, oh, I do it in the morning or I do it in the evening. Because I'm a business owner and I have my own freedom and I have my own schedule, I see it as part of my job to like, if I want to regulate myself in the middle of a day at 12 p.m. or go on a walk with my dog, or, shake my body, or do a breath work, I do it because it's part of who I am. It enhances me rather than I feel like it's an additional thing I have to do, in the, after work hours. So that's why, like, for me, flow is important. On top of that, of course, also with the menstrual cycle, it changes for me. Even my workouts, like I don't work out during a certain time in my cycle. I take it super, super slow, super easy. And I think the most important thing is also just like how it is with everything, health, business, is to not just follow something that everyone else is following because it works for them. Like, some people need more rest. Some people do better working out high intensity for 20 minutes. Some people do better doing yoga. It's really important to like understand how you work, how your nervous system works, what enhances you. So if someone's listening and they don't have a routine yet or want to build that, I think rather than doing that is actually getting to know yourself first and realizing what actually works for me. What is it that enhances me, what makes me feel the best, and then build on top of that, rather than having all these things that you're doing in a day, ticking off a box, believing, oh, this was going to make me happy, but actually you feel more stressed or miserable at the end of the day because it's not actually the thing that you need in that moment, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I think it's a great way of saying, you need to, again, also within your daily rituals, find your alignment, your equilibrium, and it changes. Again, don't be too strict about it, but yes, definitely have some sort of structure and routine. So yeah, I
Exactly.
appreciate that. And what currently, who or what inspires you the most in your entrepreneurial or spiritual journey currently? Do you have anyone that you're just like, oh yeah, I think about this person all the time because XYZ?
Hmm. So that's a good question. In terms of I don't think it's necessarily just entrepreneurial. Like, I don't see my business as a separate entity from myself. The way that I started to shift my life is into focusing on becoming the best version of myself. That means like if I'm the best version of myself, I know that my business is the best version of itself that it can be because I'm creating it. If I'm the best version of myself, I know my relationship is at a good place, right? So like I, instead of focusing too much on like, oh, this entrepreneur is doing it that way, so I need to do it that way, I look at people and I wonder like, who are they? Like, how do they deal with challenges? How do they deal with setbacks? Or what's about them? Like, what's different about them? Not about what they do, but who they are. How do they show up? How do they navigate through life? So that has been a huge shift for me of like focusing really on becoming the best version of myself rather than um, thinking so much about business results, because I do think your business results are again a result of how you are showing up and who you are being. And so I do have people that I really admire, but it's not specifically just one person. It's more when I go through life phases, it's more of like I get inspired by their mindset. I get inspired by how they're carrying themselves, rather than by what they're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So a little deeper question now. What are three words you want to know, you want people to know you for after you leave this physical plane? And feel free to think for a moment.
Wow. You ask what do I want people to know me for?
Hmm.
I think one of the biggest things that came through is my heart. It's like I deeply connect with people, and there's so many unhealed people in the world, so much trigger in the world, so much hate, so like I've been having a viral video on YouTube go viral the last couple of days, and most of the comments are positive, but a lot of them, not a lot of them, like I want to say, I got like five maybe hate comments, like people that just don't know me say things that, and it hurts. Of course, the first thing that is like, you don't even know me, like why are you saying that? And I wish more people would look beyond the words that are being said, and look at the person, and not only for me, but within people too. Like when you truly see a person for who they are rather than what they do or what they said. So that's what I wish, but not only for myself, but truly for everyone that interacts with everyone. Um, the other thing is the other word that came up is integrity. It's really this like truly embodying the work that you are about. um that's what's really important for me, is this like, hey, when I say I care about you, I care about you. And being okay with, even if I do have my boundaries to protect myself, doesn't mean I no longer care about you. I'm still in integrity. So that means like, if for example I teach healthy boundaries or protecting yourself, or saying no even though you want to say yes, but I don't do it myself, I'm out of integrity. And so there is this like, that's what's really important for me, that if I truly say it, I embody that too, and I mirror it to the people that are in my life. um and the third word, hmm, the third word that comes up is belief. I guess like, in a way, I would love the biggest block I see in people is that they're not believing in themselves. And I have so many people that like, I see so much potential in them, and I see how amazing they are, and how they could change the world. And when I tell them that, they're like, oh really, like, do you really think that? And I think that's the thing that I think most of us we struggle with. It's like, we can hear it from other people, but unless we don't truly believe it and feel it, it's always going to block us in some kind of way, right? And so I do think, what I wish is that when people enter my world in any way, it doesn't even have to be through client, but just seeing one video and never seeing me again, like it doesn't matter, but that they at least have this feeling of like, oh, now I believe in myself, like just a little bit more, that I am good enough, that I'm capable, that I can follow my dreams, and I can create this life that I dream of.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Sounds like these three words and the explanation thereof is the perfect definition of the spiritual entrepreneur.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's funny. It's funny how sometimes these values are very much like congruent with that, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we're coming up towards the end of the podcast, and I'd like to always give the last part over to our guest and really ask them like, what's your future goals? What's your vision? Like, what are you looking to call in the coming years?
So that is also for my personal life or business
Yeah.
or yeah.
Anyhow you want to shape it, personal, business, because again, like spiritual entrepreneur, it's kind of it's very close together, you know.
Yeah. Um hmm. Because everything has been shifting so much in my life, I think for me, it's I would love to connect with people more in a physical sense. So I've had a retreat last year that happened in Spain, which was a wonderful experience. I literally had people flying from the States, from all around the world, and I realized how powerful personal, like physical connections are. It's a layer deeper than what you can create in an online space, of course, which I'm sure you know. So my biggest vision within me and within what I'm creating is to bring all these powerful women together into a space, into a physical space, and have those incredible events that are going beyond what you can even imagine. Like when we as women come together and we bring our energies together, there's so much healing and transformation and like shifts that can happen that is just like beyond words. And I've seen it, and I would love to create it on a much bigger scale. I will create it on a much bigger scale, um, and really just for me personally, of course, like get my message out there even more. So for me right now, because I've shifted everything in my business, is really start having a much bigger audience so that people can hear the things that are truly going to help them. Because I know how it feels to feel stuck. I know how it feels to feel like there's something wrong with you. I know how it feels to feel like you want to give up. How you're doubting yourself. How you're burned out, you're tired, you're exhausted, and I want these people to finally see like you're not the problem, right? It's not you. Like there's quick shifts can happen when you have the right support. And so I do wish to have a bigger scale of an audience so that more people can find this work and to truly believe in themselves again and see that they're capable of creating their dream life and their dream business truly.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom, all your heart. And then last question, where can people find you and how can they get in touch?
Yes. So I'm pretty much everywhere. So Instagram, I have two Instagrams at the moment. I'm growing my other accounts. I think you reached out to the through the I am Jessica Karwat. I have a second one that I'm growing at the moment. Um, YouTube, Jessica Karwat. You just type it in, you will find me. TikTok, Jessica Karwat. On there, I also have two accounts. One of them is no longer active, so you might find another account. I'm growing another account at the moment as well. And I also have my own podcast, which is for female entrepreneurs, which is called Transform with Jess. And Facebook, yeah, everywhere. So if any question comes up, if anything that inspired you to reach out, like I love having conversations, feel free to send me a DM. Of course, my website as well, women's academy of transformation.com. Yeah, lots of places to find me.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks so much. So let's check out what you come up with in the future. We're excited to be part of your journey, and thanks so much for being here and sharing all the heart and wisdom and your transformation, which is so powerful because I
Thank
think
you so
really
much.
brings a space of vulnerability to see for people that is not visible, right? You know, part of what I'm trying to do with this podcast too is kind of look behind the scenes, like how are you
Yeah.
running your business? What are the tools? What's going on with the person? So it's really cool that you gave us that insight today, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a lot of fun. I love this type of stuff. So thank you for giving me that space to also share my story. I really appreciate that.
Amazing. You're welcome. All right.
Thank
Thank you.
you.